Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, she is going to set out the immigration crackdown, all the plans for that later this evening. We'll take a bit of that from the House of Commons, but let's have a look at what she posted on her social media to explain this whole plan earlier today.
On Monday, I will announce the most significant changes to our asylum system in modern times. Today, I want to tell you why. Across Europe, asylum claims are falling, but in Britain, they are rising. In the last 4 years, 400,000 people claimed asylum here. Over 100,000 are housed and supported at taxpayers' expense.
She's right, certainly in terms of asylum seekers. The numbers as well, so far people coming over in small boats illegally has been 38,987. That's the 2025 figure so far. And this month alone, November, there have been 2,038 people. Since Starmer became Prime Minister, 62,229 people. Those are the figures as we speak right now. There's a lot of talk of a huge rebellion from Labour MPs, quite a few of them very unhappy. People like John McDonnell, Bel Rubiero-Addy, Clive Lewis, perhaps not a shock to those who know the Labour Party. But Tony Vaughan, the MP for Folkestone and Hythe, he says these asylum proposals suggest we have taken the wrong turning. The rhetoric around these reforms encourages the same culture of divisiveness that sees racism and abuse growing in our communities. Do you agree with him? What do you think of that? 0344 499 1000. Abid Sam Mohammed, the MP for Sheffield Central. For more than a decade, we've seen that hostile policies don't fix the asylum system. They just create chaos, cost and deeper division. The latest proposals repeat the same mistake. Rachel Maskell, the dehumanisation of people in desperation, is the antithesis of what the Labour Party is about. Well, let's see what the Conservative Party think. The Tories have offered their support.
What we're seeing from the Labour government is steps in the right direction, so we want to encourage them in that right direction. Of course, we have a fully comprehensive borders plan. Some of what we've seen Labour announce is similar, but not as much as what we've done. We can see that the Labour backbenchers don't like this, so I have offered that we will support the government in going in the right direction.
Kemi Badenoch there, the leader of the Conservatives, leader of the opposition. This was the view of the Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice.
The reality is, however well-intentioned the Home Secretary is, A, she hasn't got the support and confidence of her own party, but B, while still being a member of the European Convention on Human Rights and still having the Human Rights Act in its current form, she just won't be able to deliver what she's talking about. I do think it's slightly ironic. If we had said 2 months ago in our party conference what she said over the weekend, we'd been caused all sorts of nasty, beastly names.
That's a very interesting point from Richard Tice. Let's pick it up with Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Isabel, Richard's right there when he says that if Reform UK, or even the Conservatives, put forward these plans, which are pretty strong, certainly in what the original intent is. We'll see if it actually gets through, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if a party that wasn't as much on the left as Labour is put these forward, they'd be pilloried for it, wouldn't they?
Well, they're certainly very tough sounding, and I do think that Shabana Mahmood seems to mean it now she's Home Secretary, although I've just spotted on social media something circulating, which is an old video of her when she was just a backbencher, calling for an amnesty on all illegal immigrants in the country at the moment.
Yeah, I think that was in 2019 she said that, so she's certainly changed her tune in 6 years.
I mean, she really has. Again, this is a woman who once went to the beaches of Lesbos to wrap blankets around refugees arriving across the Mediterranean in illegal boats. So she has performed something of a political full circle, really, on this, if she's to be believed. But I actually think she does mean it. And why? Because she's actually a pretty intelligent person who can see what most of us can see, which is that this crisis really is, as she put it, tearing Britain apart. But all too predictably, we've already got coming out of the woodwork those on her own side, normally, Labour MPs and left-wing activists who are crying foul at this and saying, you know, this is more akin to something you'd expect parties of the right to do. And it will require primary legislation, a lot of what she intends to do. And I think she's going to have quite a rough ride getting that through.
Yeah, we have Stella Creasy, the MP for Walthamstow, saying this is not just performatively cruel, It is economically misjudged. Simon Offer, the MP for Stroud, we should stop the scapegoating of immigrants because it's wrong and cruel. Kat Eccles from Starbridge, I am massively disappointed and angry about what the Home Secretary is saying. I've got a list of 17 MPs and one Lord who are all apparently against this. And this is kind of day one, actually, that they're putting this out there. Similarly to the problems that Keir Starmer had getting his welfare plans through, this could be very embarrassing for the government if it goes through simply with Tory and Reform UK support, perhaps. Certainly Kermie Badenoch saying she'll support the government in this, when actually many Labour MPs could be coming out and voting against this.
Well, I mean, I suppose to a certain extent, Shabana Mahmood and the government will get what they want, which is a lot of noise about them trying to do things that sound tough on illegal immigration. What I don't think they'll get is any demonstrable difference. I don't think that voters are going to feel much different in the next few years about what's happening with illegal immigration in our country, because none of this is going to stop the boats. You know, they are still going to come pouring across the channel in dinghies unless the government has come up with some other measure, which we don't yet know about. So it's not going to stop the boats coming. And yet we're still going to have as well all the inevitable human rights-based challenges to whatever it is, all the different things that she is trying to achieve. And, you know, worthy as it may well be to say at this point, well, you'll have to stay in the UK 20 years before you can become a fully fledged British citizen. You know, that's 20 years of still being in our country. And what most voters are really wanting to hear is that a lot of people are going to be kicked out.
And I wonder, after 17 and a half years that people are in this country, they say they're going to look at this every sort of 2.5 years. I do wonder how many people they're going to say after 17 and a half years, actually, you may have bought a house here, you may have a job here, you may have kids here, you may have married someone from here. Actually, you've got to go back to Eritrea because it's now safe. I mean, I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. I'm simply wondering about the practicality and how realistic it is that that would happen. Because you can talk tough on this, but actually, if you've got indefinite leave to remain for 20 years rather than 10 years rather than 5 years, it doesn't make a huge difference to your life, especially as the level of administration that is needed here. I mean, you're talking about a heck of a lot more bureaucracy as well. I'm not saying that shouldn't happen, but if you're going to check people every 2.5 years, I wonder whether that will be done properly or whether it'll simply be a tick box exercise. The Home Office, of course, is often where you know, the civil service is one of the most bureaucratic and difficult parts of the civil service to actually get something through.
I mean, I think I'm afraid it's all a nonsense, this 20 years thing, and the whole thing about, well, we'll return you to your country of origin if it becomes safe. I mean, how on earth is that going to be assessed? You know, I suspect that the threshold that will be applied for safety will be extraordinarily high. You know, at the moment, apparently, we've got peace in our time in Gaza, but I very much doubt that the people living in Gaza feel that there's peace in our time at this point. So does that mean that people are now going to be able to be returned to Gaza?
And there's so many different excuses as well with Afghanistan, for example, and just because a country is stable doesn't necessarily mean it's safe. I wonder if you could get your perspective, Isabel, as well on these thousands of people protesting in Crowborough about 600 lone male asylum seekers in an army camp on the edge of the town. This is an interesting story. Big protest happened yesterday, and we have a number of people very, very angry about the fact that 600 lone male asylum seekers are going to be at an army camp on the edge of their town. About 2,000 people attended. Locals say they've already installed panic alarms in their homes amid safety fears, while raising concerns about the migrants registering with GPs in the county, some already struggling to book appointments.
Well, I think this just symbolises what's going on all over the country, although this has caught a lot of attention because it's a sort of an area that people are describing as very leafy. But, you know, all over the country, people who are finding that there are asylum seekers being accommodated very near them or very near their child's school or in particular neighbourhoods are very nervous. And that is not racism, it's entirely legitimate and logical concern based on the behaviour of a minority of asylum seekers who have been known to commit the most terrible crimes. Now, of course, British people also commit terrible crimes, but British people are not concentrated in these types of settings with nobody knowing exactly who they are.
Yeah. I wonder if I could ask you, just before you go, about this story about Maxie Allen. We're going to speak to him a little bit later on in the programme. This is a person who I know because I worked with him, but he was complaining about his daughter's school, and then suddenly police were on his doorstep. He and his partner have now got a £20,000 payout. I remember the story at the time. It was just absolutely outrageous that simply through writing letters and emails to the school to complain about education, that the police came round. We can see some of the footage on the screen now of the 6 officers who came round, knocked the door, arrested Maxie and his partner Rosalind in front of their children, took them away and held them for over 10 hours. I think a lot of people really worry about this because the police seem to not pick up many of the criminals they should be picking up, and actually picking on people like Maxie who they should be nowhere near.
I mean, what an absolute nonsense. I mean, completely ridiculous to send multiple officers round to the household of someone who was accused of nothing whatsoever that was any kind of safety risk to anybody. I'm afraid this isn't an isolated case. I actually wrote for the Telegraph about a similar case of a father who found himself subject to the same sort of treatment from the police after he sent multiple complaining emails to the school. Now, in the case of this particular father, he'd be the first to say that he's no angel. He's had the odd brush with the law before, but in no way, shape or form did he constitute, a massive threat to the school or to society at that point, because he was writing some slightly grumpy emails to the school. I mean, this is all ridiculous. This reflex of, well, we're going to report it to the police. And I think some of this is actually, the political class is to blame. For years, politicians have used reporting things to the police as a weapon against political opponents, stuff that really the police should have no locus in altogether. And it sets a terrible example to everyone else.
Yeah, and I think the spiciest thing that Rosalind, Maxie's partner, wrote was that she called a teacher a control freak. I mean, that is not an arrestable offence. Isabel, thank you. Appreciate you joining us today. That's Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Mo and